leading that for us. And if you want to keep these songbooks open as you go ahead and take a seat, that might be a good idea. That the trials and troubles of this world are not what determines the state of his soul. He had a son and a couple of daughters, and 4 daughters, and in 1870, scarlet fever killed his only son. He was, as an attorney, he also made some investments and things like that. Has anyone heard of the Chicago fires? Anyone? That completely financially ruined him 1 year after his son died. And those are not the events that led to the writing of the song. Sort of the culmination of some of the tragedies in his life happened in 1873. So a span of just 3 or 4 years here, from 1870 to 1873. He was going to go on a missionary trip from the United States over to Europe to work with D.L. Moody. Now, I really looked to see like what his financial state was at the time. I didn't get much out of history about exactly where his financial level of security was, but he had some final arrangements to make, sort of closing out his American affairs before he was going to sail over. Well, there was some sort of collision or something, that ship sank, and then he lost all 4 of his daughters in that one event. Now, there were some rescued from that collision, and his wife sent a telegram from the UK. She was in Wales, so that's kind of like that bottom corner that sticks out. I imagine that's one of the first points ships could get to. And she sent a telegram that said, I imagine he had news of the ship sinking and didn't know who lived and who survived. And his wife just sent, saved alone, and that's it. And some historical accounts add the phrase, saved alone, what shall I do? And so I got really interested in like maybe why the message was so short. But it turns out telegrams back then were billed by the word. And, does anybody remember when text, you had to pay by the text? How much did it cost back then? Like 10 cents or something like that? I looked it up, and a short telegram like that in today's dollars would have cost about $150 to $200 just to send a 2-word message. So we're used to kind of this instantaneous, fast, long communication. I don't know if I would imagine if you were saved from a shipwreck, you may not have a lot of pocket money or something like that. So I don't know. History doesn't tell us that situation, but I was kind of really interested in that. So that kind of explains the brevity of the message and keeping it short. I text like that all the time. My wife does not. She's kind of like writing out these huge, giant messages. But anyway, so he's here in the United States. His wife is still alive. He's lost all of his children, all of his earthly wealth. And he decides to go meet her to do the missionary work. He did go on to have a very long missionary career. He set up some sort of group in Jerusalem that was open to especially the poor. And he had a pretty long career on the mission field. Yes, and actually we're going to get into some of that. So the way the story goes is, on his journey over, the captain of the ship knew of this tragedy and kind of pointed out to him, here is the spot where the ship sank. And so he writes this hymn. Right at that moment, he writes the opening line. And in my digging around, you can actually see a copy of his original handwritten version of the hymn. It's in the Library of Congress, and they have digitized all that, and you can bring it up and look at it. It's just on hotel stationery. There's some faded parts of it I was trying to get into. They don't transcribe it into, out of the cursive and the handwriting. And it just looks like he had some prayer requests written on the bottom of this hotel stationery. I think things like that are really neat. But so when you read the words, and now you know the story of the shipwreck and everything, when we look at things like when sorrows like sea billows roll, you can kind of imagine him, North Atlantic, looking out and just seeing those waves of sorrow just hitting him. This is a guy who has gone through a lot of things. So just right there, I kind of want to just use that to set up the entire premise of the quarter. It's not until winter, but we pick up these song books, or we look at them on the screen, and we just kind of think, oh yeah, okay, someone was poetic and musically talented and wrote that. But a lot of hymns have stories like this behind them that I think when you sing it now, hopefully when you pick up this song book and you sing it now, you kind of say, this isn't just someone, being poetic. This is someone pouring out everything they have into this message. And so to give a testimony like that, when we say it is well with my soul, it sounds nice and it sings very well, and we have that echo, but there's so much more to the story. So let's dig into it verse by verse and kind of look at some of the background. But I hope, as you sing this song from now on, and you go, it is well with my soul, maybe think about the tragedy that's happened in your life, and sometimes maybe your faith walk is difficult. His life is a testimony to the earthly things that happen to us. Our soul is going to be okay in the big eternal scheme of things. Now, that can be easy to say, but I think sometimes when we sing like things like this, we need to remember that. So let's start with some of the lyrics here. I'd like you, I know I have you with two books out at the same time, because I would like you to turn to Philippians 4:7, which I think is it's probably well known once you read it, but I think it kind of mirrors the message of this first verse of the song. So, first verse says, when peace like a river, more of the water kind of, you're comparing the ocean to a river. Now, I know rivers can get pretty wild, but when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, so whatever's happened to you on earth, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And then we go into the chorus. So let's take a look at Philippians 4, verse 7. Super, super well known, and we even have other hymns that are based on this particular verse here. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Jesus Christ. So what we see here is the author of this hymn using the images of his voyage, where he is right in that moment. We have the rivers, the waves, to kind of describe this really big spiritual truth. Now, I don't know about you, but he's still on his missionary journey. I could imagine people saying, this is too much. This is too much. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do something else. I'm not going to travel over here. And I know his wife is still alive, but losing all 5 of your children and all your financial situation in that short amount of time, the idea of giving up had to have crossed his mind. It just had to. So when I want to ask you, we sing this song and we like the music, we like to sing it, but when you read this and when you sing this, I want to ask, what does peace like a river look like in real life? And have you, and to kind of maybe go with that, have you ever experienced God's peace in a way that almost doesn't make sense to the world or to others around you? Have you ever been able to do that or seen that in other people? Let me open that up to you as we take a look at this song. Yeah, you've experienced God's peace in ways that don't make sense. Have you ever had people around you just say, how do you do that? Or, I'm just curious. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff, for sharing that. Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah, I think as Christians, if people around you know that you're a Christian, and they should, they're gonna have an eye on you as you go through life's trials. And a couple years ago, I lost both my brother and brother-in-law and grandparents in like a span of about 2 years. And a lot of people I worked with knew and I was talking to some coworkers and just say I could not make it through this without my faith. And one of my coworkers just kind of, he was like, I think I said, I don't know how people without faith make it. And this person was openly, not a person of faith or anything like it. He just kind of went, you just do. And just the hollowness and emptiness of that was really chilling. I remember it to this day, like years later. And so I think whenever the trials of life hit us, which they always do, right? They always do. People are watching to see if your faith is going to be shaken. And I think the way we react to things like this is one of the greatest testimonies we can give about being Christians to the world. The fact that we lean into God's peace in a way that doesn't make sense. That's a peace beyond understanding. Like, they almost shouldn't understand how you can get through this sort of thing. I know that kind of breaks down. They should understand that it's because you're leaning into your faith. But that's kind of, I think, one of the things we can take away from this. It's kind of scary to sort of exercise your faith in this way because it's in the middle of trials. But, it is, I think, a more powerful way to show that we have a more abundant life, that this is the best plan for making it through this earthly life. Any other thoughts on that before we move on to verse 2? All right, I'm going to read verse 2 here. Just one little note I want to bring out before I get too far in and miss this. This song, Carl just led this for us, but it can be led in very different ways. Has anyone ever sung this at a funeral? I have. At a funeral, you might kind of sing it in a very somber, slow way. But you can also sing it very, very triumphantly, right? You can kind of sing this more as like an anthem, okay? And I just want to take a moment to point out like the versatility of the song and how it can apply to some of the hardest moments of our lives, like loss and funerals. But it can also be sung in such a triumphant way too. Like, no matter what's happening, I don't know. And I think as we go through the verses, that goes up and up and up. And there are some performance notes on the bottom here. You see that in really small letters, where you kind of start softly, go a little louder, and then pick up the tempo. And so you have a lot of options on how you sing this, which I think makes it an even more powerful song, that it can speak to you in moments of loss, in both moments of triumphing over loss. So we all sing, every Sunday we come in here and worship, and just think for a moment like how worship goes to God, but it's for us and for one another as well. We're singing to each other as well. And so I just think it's really, really interesting to take a moment and say, when we sing and worship, different messages can come out to different people. And I just want to pause and admire the beauty of that thing. So let's get into verse 2 here. Verse 2 is kind of him talking about being under attack, and he definitely was. He has all this earthly loss. Let's see here. My sin, oh the bliss. Wait, am I in the right? I'm wondering if this might be a different arrangement than my notes. I'm looking for the line. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come. Okay. It's not just me. Well, I don't have a copy of this at home when I got ready. So that's the hidden verse, I guess, okay? All right, so are we familiar with that line from the song? Though Satan should buffet, okay. So sorry about that mix-up. So a verse that we are missing mentions this, though Satan should buffet and trials should come. Now, they're not talking about the buffet that's like hometown buffet right there, right? What does that buffet mean? It means to like be hit repeatedly, okay? Kind of like I think of like a football lineman kind of pushing against the other team. And we have Satan attacking, though trials should come. Let's take a look at Job chapter 1. Here's Roger. He must have got to look at my notes before I started. All right. I appreciate that. In Job chapter 1, this is after Job's, this is after all the servants kind of ran in and said, hey, buddy, you've lost it all. They have just come in and said, everything's gone. And so, let's see. Let's go ahead and start this in 20. Then Job got up and tore his robe. He shaved his head and threw himself down with his face to the ground. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I return there. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. May the name of the Lord be blessed. In all this, Job did not sin, nor did he charge God with moral impropriety. So I think sometimes when we go through loss, we tend to sometimes want to, blame God. Like, can you imagine? I can imagine, like Job, or not Job, the author here, saying, God, how can you take all this from me? How can you take all this from me? You're taking this from me when I'm on my way to serve you. Like I'm setting up my family to go live abroad and spread your word. I can really see that thought entering into my heart and maybe his, that under attack, you kind of want to get mad at God. You want to get mad at God for what he's done. And in this verse that we're missing here, he basically says, even though I'm under attack, even though the trials have come, I am not going, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul is what he says. So, sometimes in life when trials come like this, it takes a lot of faith to remember that God is in control of the universe, and we are just temporarily behind enemy lines, and we're not going to be here forever. I think it's very hard to have an eternal perspective as a human being, but that's what the song declares to us. Any thoughts on that when trials come? How do you remember that God's in control when trials come? Yeah, Jen. Yeah, I think especially, I know right in the moment of my loss and trial, when things are falling down around me, it's really hard for me. But when I look back at trials that happened to me 1 month ago, 1 year ago, 10 years ago, I can really see God's hand in them in ways that I couldn't when I was right there in the middle of it. Anyone else have a thought before we look at this final verse here? Yeah, and it takes a lot of faith to do that at some at moments like this. You know, you think about if you look at his life, he did go on to do incredible, and it doesn't come out in the song too well. He does talk about the triumph of faith here at the end, so maybe in a sense it does. But if you go examine his life, he did a lot of missionary work, a lot of writings, a lot of, you know, a lot of souls brought to Christ. So it does work. Like when we look at his life through the lens that you're talking about, we see the truth of that. Thank you. All right, real quick, let's look at this third verse. Hopefully they didn't change it up on me too much here. In verse 3, we see, "And Lord, haste the day when the faith shall be sight." What does that mean? We just kind of sing it, so let's just really talk about what it means. Roger, go ahead. I feel the same way. That's why I picked it today. But go ahead. Go ahead. Sure. I choke up too when I'm singing, even just before the class, even though I was ready. Yeah. No, you're good. I know. I know. No, Roger, first of all, when I get up there at the table, I choke up a lot too, and I appreciate that. Okay? I do it all the time. So I'm glad that we can be together like this. I'm just going to say that first of all. But you're bringing out exactly what I want to get to here. That, you know, one of the definitions of faith right out of the Bible is belief in things what? Unseen. What are we doing here? We're changing the story, okay? This is the final triumph, okay? Now, the verse says, haste the day when the faith shall be sight. So the things that are unseen will be seen. Clouds be rolled back. So we're revealing God's majesty. This is it is well with my soul, trouble, sin, struggle, tragedy. And now we get to see how the story ends. The story ends in triumph. And that's why musically we have the option to kind of slow it down and then boom, with this final verse here, we sing it in triumph. It really talks about here the trump resounding, kind of like that's right out of Revelation. And it says in Revelation 21:4, at the end, God is going to wipe away every tear. So we're going to see Christ face to face after all these trials, and it will still be well with our soul. So I'm out of time. I just want to say that this song has a deep history. It was sung at a lot of the revival tent kind of meetings that Spafford and Moody had. I'm told this was a common song in World War I trenches, and that was some, we think about modern warfare, that was some terrible stuff. If you ever look at what those guys went through in World War I. If anybody remembers, this was a commonly sung song right around 9/11. If anybody remembers, many churches, that was a Wednesday night. You guys remember 9/11 was a Wednesday. A lot of people came to church and they threw out whatever they had planned. We just kind of talked about what happened that day. And I seem to remember that being sung for us. We were attending in Grove City at the time. This has become more than just his personal testimony. It's really a song we sing in times of tragedy and times of triumph. It is a go-to song for so many moments of life. I am out of time. I'm going to go ahead and close this in prayer. Thank you for the participation. Roger, thank you especially for yours. I appreciate you sharing that vulnerable moment with us, and I think we're all right there with you. Father, we thank you that we have these hymns that have been given to us by your people that we can sing in all the different moments of life, Father, the sad moments and the happy moments, Father. And we just thank you that we have, as a church, that we can come together and sing through songs like this and have them speak to us and speak to one another. These aren't just words. These are messages from your word set into poetry that we can sing in ways that help us to recall them in times of trial and times of triumph, Father. We can sing them to ourselves. We can sing them in a group. It doesn't matter. They're still true. We just ask that you allow us to examine the hymns that we sing very carefully and very meaningfully as we sing them. We're not just, reading words off the page, that we're actually singing them and writing them on our hearts and making this noise to celebrate you and to celebrate your plan for life, Father. Just be with us as we go through this worship service together, Father. May every part of it uplift and glorify you and edify your people, Father. We ask all these things in your name. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So more to come in the winter. We're going to try to do this one by rotation, so if you have a favorite, you want to get up here and teach your favorite hymn, we're looking for you here this winter.